Room 442 is presented by North Star Bets. That's a win.
Welcome into Room 442. I'm Sarah Pararia and joined by Mr. Steven Caldwell, former TFC captain, Scotland international, Newcastle United player. The list goes on and on. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. Excited to be here.
I'm very excited, and we are jumping in to discuss TFC, of course. Steven, 7 games in, 5 draws, 1 win, 1 loss. What are you thinking with the first 7 games? I know it's early days, but how are you feeling about the season so far for these guys?
I think it's been underwhelming. That'd probably be the word that I would use. Not disastrous. I think when we draw 5 of the games and obviously win 1, it's you can't say it's that bad, but it's not been enjoyable to watch. It's not been great football. It's not been a particularly difficult schedule, in my opinion, either. So I think you have to take that into consideration. And when I look at the makeup of this squad, the fears that I had going into the season in terms of mobility, dynamicism, all the things that you expect to see in the best MLS sides or the sides that are usually competing near the end of the season is not there. And I don't know where it's going to come from. So I think there's a lot of concerns there for Bob Bradley and his side, and how high up the Eastern Conference. I think you can get in the playoffs. There's 9 teams, is it 9 that make it this year? It's pretty crazy. So I think they can get in the playoffs, but I don't know how high up that conference they'll be and how legitimate they can be for MLS Cup contenders.
Yeah, I mean, they're 9th right now, so it's, very narrow. If they go to 10th, they're already out. I mean, like I said, early days, but there's a bit of a narrative going around TFC in the Canadian media, I find, and everyone's saying, they're 6 games unbeaten.
Yeah.
It's very positive sounding. If you're, an average fan, you're not paying attention, you're hearing 6 games unbeaten. They've won 6 games. They've not. They've drawn 5 of those. Of course, they beat Inter Miami, which was a massive win, knowing the stature of that side, but are people giving TFC, a little bit of a, advantage that, okay, this is the Toronto team, we want to support them, and not really being realistic about how this team is doing? Because I think from my perspective, at least, I wouldn't go around saying this team is 6 games unbeaten, even though that's the case. I would say they have 5 draws and 1 win.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way to reflect on it. When you've drew so many games and go back to the last home game, the draw against Charlotte when they were 2-0 up against a team like Charlotte. You have to finish that off. So the criticism should be there. For some reason, people get really precious about TFC and the criticism that comes their way. And I know I get a bit of that whenever I'm doing a TFC game on TSN. It comes my way. But I just try and be honest and reflect on it the way that you should. And it's important that fans and media alike ask questions about this team. They spend a lot of money. They invest heavily in the team. They're one of the biggest clubs in North America, and they're certainly one of the biggest clubs in MLS. So the questions should be there, because when you're spending that kind of money, you're trying to put a roster together, and it's been pretty disastrous. I mean, I said underwhelming earlier, but when you think about the last few years, it's been pretty disastrous. When you think about where TFC are, it's just not good enough. And so eventually, at some point, the questions need to be asked about the players, about the coaching staff, about upper management, because of the stature of this team. So they're in that space, and of course, seasons can, it's sort of teetering on the edge. When you've had 5 draws, there's a potential to go and win 3 or 4 in a row, and they could go and do that. But I just don't see it. I just don't see this side having enough to go and consistently win games at MLS level.
Let's talk about the players before we climb that ladder of coaches and then management. I think it would be unjust to talk about TFC without talking about Lorenzo Insigne, who we've known to come from Napoli, get injured last season, and then in the first match of the season gets injured again. He's had an ongoing calf problem. This is not news, but how big of a blow is that to TFC? And do you think they were relying too much on Lorenzo Insigne because of the player that he is?
Yeah, and I think they should rely on him. When you spend that kind of money and he's a designated player, you have to rely on these guys. But they've never found a way to get him playing his best, to get him playing in the form that we saw at Napoli and with the Italian men's national team. So that is a big issue as well. I think with a guy like Insigne, my opinion of him is that he's a tremendous player when he has really good players round about him. And it's been an issue for TFC. And the main player for Insigne to connect with is a number 9. And that's been lacking. Jesus Jimenez didn't work. Iowa and all some struggles. I think DeAndre Kerr has potential, but not as a number 9. I actually believe he's got potential as an 8, as a kind of box-to-box midfielder. So he doesn't have that central striker that we see him connect so much with. He doesn't have blistering pace, so he sort of needs others around him to create these combinations and to be at his absolute best. So TFC haven't gave him the platform to be as influential as he could be. But likewise, I don't think that he's maybe had certainly not the impact of a Giovinco, but had the the sort of he's not integrated himself into the city, into the team, into the country the way that someone like a Giovinco did as well. So, I'm sorry to draw parallels, but it has to come when you think about a guy like Giovinco and the impact that he had. And Insigne has been nowhere near that, and he's got a lot to do to live up to the hype and the money that they're paying for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a really good point with just his connection with the city. I really don't think, you saw Seba always going, out with the crowd, with the people, downtown, doing whatever. And then Insigne, it kind of just seems like he's on his own, doing his own thing, which, to be fair, like, that's not my business. If he wants to do that, that's fine. And
that's fine. And everybody's different. Every personality is different. But, I mean, Seba's still here. He still lives here.
Yeah.
He loves the city that much. And that's not the be-all and end-all when it comes to it. But I just don't see that integration into the squad and the impact that I've always said designated players have so much pressure on their shoulders. They have to be the best trainer, they have to be a leader, they have to perform every single week. Everything leads towards justifying the price tag because the anomalies between the pay disparity within MLS is there. So there's a lot of pressure on designated players, and so far, like I said, Insigne's not living up to it.
But we could say that Federico Bernardeschi is. I mean, this TFC side has relied on Bernardeschi every match this game. I think he's been the most important player for TFC. And we've also seen him out and about at Raptors games, Jays games, and he has that really bubbly, really loud personality. But he seems like just a really great guy on the pitch, and he has helped TFC so much.
Yeah, he's the only one that makes things happen for TFC at the moment. Every time the ball goes to Bernardeschi, you think something's going to happen and maybe he can create a goal or score a goal. And obviously he's had some big moments since he came. I think overall he would be hoping to have a bigger impact on games as well, which is a crazy thing to say when you look at his stats. He's took a lot of penalties as well, which he's put away, and it's not always the easiest thing. As we see around the world, people miss penalties everywhere. But I think like overall, consistently throughout a 90 minutes game in, game out, week in, week out, it could be even better. So again, it's up to kind of the squad, the team, to figure out how they get Bernardeschi in the right kind of areas and even more influential. I think at times he gets a bit isolated and it's easy for teams to make him a touch predictable. So with the stats that he has, they are impressive, but there's more to come from Bernardeschi if the team can really find the areas that he wants to operate in.
I think that's what it is, though. There are so many moments when I've seen him playing where he's trying to, get someone to make a run. These cross balls, the overlaps, and the players just aren't on the same level. And that's when you can really draw the differences, I think. Like, he's giving you that through ball, and, whoever it is, Ozo, Michael Bradley, Mark Anthony Kaye, they are not making that run.
And it's the makeup of the squad. Sorry to interrupt you there,
no,
but
it's
when you have these eights that make they kind of runs, then they are going to get in the end of Bernardeschi coming back inside onto his left foot. We saw Insigne and Bernardeschi at times doing similar things from either flank where they understand each other's game. So, we're a good few months in now with Bernardeschi. People should understand his game and know what he wants to do. And I think at times Larea and Bernardeschi are obviously showing some great signs when Richie's coming bombing out on the outside. It gives Bernardeschi that space, and there's the option there to play Larea or to come inside himself. But there's more there as well. Like, there really is more to come from that partnership and overall Bernardeschi's impact on the team.
Yeah, I agree. Let's shift our focus now to Bob Bradley. Bit of a sticky one because I think everyone I've spoken to has very different opinions on this. If TFC don't do well this season, will we shift our focus to looking at Bob Bradley and thinking maybe he's not the right guy for the job? And no disrespect to Bob Bradley. We know he's a very talented coach, but sometimes it just works that the coach and the team don't mesh. Yeah.
Well, when you come to Toronto, the pressure's on you. You have to accept that, whether you're a player or or a coach, or again, a general manager, a president, the press is always going to be on you because people expect so much. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's what makes Toronto such a special club. But the pressure's on Bob Bradley. He's had a few windows now. He asked for some time to change the squad. He needed to do that. He's made some changes, made some good changes. Some areas I think maybe recruitment could have been a little bit better, and that's not all just down to Bob Bradley. There's others involved in that process. But ultimately, he's got to get the best at the team that are going out there. And at the moment, I don't think this team looks like what Bob Bradley hopes it does. So, in fairness to him, he probably wants more. He wants to try and, find a style that suits what we've seen from his LAFC as an example. And I don't think this team's anywhere near that. So the pressure is on him, as it always is. I think he'll still have a little bit of time because of his reputation and his experience and his standing in the game, and he should get that. But come the summer, if TFC are really not showing signs of being a strong playoff team and an MLS Cup contender, then that pressure is going to ramp up dramatically.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think eyes are going to shift to Bob Bradley very quickly if TFC don't do well this season. But early days, I want to shift our focus a little bit to Apple TV and MLS really quick, because over the weekend when I was watching the Nashville game, I always have the TFC Twitter on my laptop as well. It's a very interesting place, the TFC Twitter world. But I noticed a lot of people were saying that their streams were cutting out, super choppy. The commentating wasn't great. Now, I know this isn't on TFC. This is an MLS agreement. But as you know, with only 3 Canadian football teams here in MLS, and we're trying to grow the sport of football, was it a bad decision for MLS? I mean, from a Canadian perspective, because I thought my stream was just something with my computer, my connection. But then I realized, the streams aren't even being provided. If you can't turn on your TV and find the TFC game on cable, it's a bit, frustrating as a football fan, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk as a fan now. Yeah, it's frustrating, of course. It happened with other products, of course, the Premier League and the Champions League going to streaming services, and it's a new world. From my point of view, I can't comment on MLS why they did it. I'm sure the product will improve. Apple is a tremendous brand; it's going to get better. But from my point of view, I just try and do my job and try and be consistent with TSN. But it's having some teething problems, let's say. I think there's many things that they've done really well in the early days and some things that they have to improve. But I'm going to give MLS and Apple the benefit of the doubt that they will do that. They'll get it right. They'll get the right people in the right roles, and the service will be right over time. It's a long-term deal. They're going to be absolutely committed to it. And hopefully everyone gets the service that they want. I don't think you can ever please everyone. I know from my experiences, just reading some of that stuff that you would get on social media, whether it be personally towards us as commentators or towards a product or whatever it may be, everyone has an opinion. You have to respect that. But ultimately, Apple will want to get that product right. They'll want to grow that product and grow the league. That's the whole point of that deal. And hopefully MLS will provide the platform to allow them to do that.
Yeah, I hope so too, because I feel like MLS is growing at a really good rate, and I just want it to keep growing, living on this side of the pond, All right, let's jump back to TFC. They play Atlanta this weekend. They are back home at BMO Field. Atlanta is not an easy team. The youngster in the front, little Argentine, Thiago Almada, been fantastic this season. What are your thoughts going into this game, and maybe a prediction, if you will?
Oh, predictions. You put me right in the spot there. I think... Atlanta have shown that they're one of the best sides in the East, so it's going to be a difficult one. And I mentioned earlier, it comes off the back of, obviously, drawing Nashville, but the home result against Charlotte was so disappointing, a game that Luke and I were at and calling, and TFC were in such a commanding position. It was a crazy night with the weather. The wind was wild, to be honest. And TFC were 2-0 up, but there was more there. It should have been probably 3 or 4. That was the chance to really put the game beyond Charlotte. So I'm going to say TFC need to show more drive, more determination from the start, really be an irritant to Atlanta. Atlanta have a lot of quality. They don't want to give Almada any space and time in that midfield. There was a lot of space and time for Charlotte midfielders in that last game at BMO Field. If they allow Araujo and Almada that kind of space and time, they're going to get destroyed. So I'm sure they'll be working on that this week. They'll be trying to prevent that. And bring some passion, bring some energy, bring some intensity to the beginning of the game. Because we've seen in MLS, anybody can beat anybody on any given day. So if they bring that intensity, I think they can get the victory. If there's space in the midfield, it could be quite a difficult night for Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the warm weather, though, will bring the fans out
Yes,
to BMO
hopefully.
Field, too, and the players will be feeling a little bit better because some of these matches have been frigid for them, and I really feel for the players. But thank you so much, Steven Caldwell. It's
Thanks
been a
for having me, Sarah.
pleasure. TFC will take on Atlanta on Saturday at 7:30 at BMO Field.
Room 442 is presented by North Star Bets. That's a win.